as Declan Fitzwilliam, as fingers burned on the heavy iron key found inside a charred loaf of rye bread displaying prime numbers. The scent of mildew and decaying leaves, P14, clawed at his nostrils. The loaf's edges were blackened, the crust brittle like old bone, the prime numbers etched into the charred surface glowing faintly under the single bare bulb hanging from the garage ceiling. His knuckles were white, the key, as heat searing through his skin, a physical echo of the dread coiling in his gut. The air hung thick with the smell of dust and forgotten things, the faded floral wallpaper peeling like dead skin in the sepia light, P15, revealing damp plaster beneath. A low, rhythmic snip, 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 snip cut through the silence. The sound of scissors snipping fabric, P22, sharp and precise, yet coming from nowhere in the cluttered garage, filled with his abandoned urban exploration gear, maps, binoculars, a rusted crowbar. He froze, heart hammering against his ribs, the key suddenly ice, cold despite the burn. Where is that coming from? Asterisk. The sound stopped abruptly, leaving only the distant, unsettling drone of a locust swarm, P16, vibrating in the coastal fog pressing against the garage windows, P11. He jerked his head towards the back corner past the stacked cardboard boxes labeled toys, maybe, and the skeletal frame of a defunct bicycle. His eyes snagged on the GPS unit on the workbench, its screen flickering erratically. The blue arrow pulsed, then displayed a route, tunneled right at the fog. Clad shoreline 0.3 miles C. He'd never seen that road on any map, never heard of a shoreline than here. Just the dense, swirling fog clinging to the coastline, P11, like a shroud. Impossible, a glitch, a dead battery, asterisk, but the screen remained stubbornly lit, the phantom route burning into his retinas. The snipper sound returned, closer this time, seeming to come from the shadow beneath the workbench. He swallowed hard, the mildew taste sharp on his tongue. Tough to wind, just the wind. Just the fog. Just the damn locusts, asterisk. He needed to get out. Now, he shoved the key into his pocket, the metal biting through fabric, and turned towards the garage door, its metal surface slick with condensation. The damp, oily patch near the threshold, he'd noticed earlier, where the old water stain from the roof had seeped through, was darker, almost black. His foot caught on the uneven concrete step, a sudden, sickening slip. He stumbled forward, arms windmilling, the world tilting violently. The garage door handle was cold metal under his palm as he lunged for it, the snip sound sharp as a blade in his ear. He hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of him, gravel digging into his palms. The fog outside, thick and cold, seemed to press closer through the grimy glass, muffling the locust drone into a dull, wet buzz. He scrambled up, fingers slick with mud, and yanked the door open. The coastal fog swallowed the garage, a wet gray curtain. He took one step into it, the damp air clinging like a shroud, the mildew scent replaced by the sharp tang of salt and something else, like old blood and wet stone. Then the door slammed shut with a force that made the entire garage rattle, not a gust of wind, not a draft. A solid, deliberate thunk-fu-thunk. He whirled, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The door was closed, the heavy metal bolt visible through the grimy window, and then from inside the garage, from the very spot where the snip had come, a low, guttural fitty as the garage door lock engaged from the inside, sealing him in the fog. The locust drone swelled, filling the space, the snip sound gone, replaced only by the relentless, wet whisper of the fog against the walls. The air reeked of ink and rot, thick as the fog that had swallowed the garage whole. My fingers trembled as I pressed them against the cold metal wall, the paint peeling in strips like dead skin, revealing a surface slick with something damp and wrong. The room stretched before me, not the garage anymore, but a chamber of forgotten things, its walls lined with shelves groaning under the weight of yellow documents, their edges curled like the pages of a dying book. The flicker of a single bulb cast long, jagged shadows across the floor, where something dark and glossy pooled at my feet. A puddle. No water, dripping steadily from somewhere unseen. The sound a slow, rhythmic footer plink, 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 that echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. I exhaled sharply, the breath ragged in my throat. Where the hell am I? The question clawed at me, but my mind refused to form an answer. The documents whispered. No, not whispered. Hummed a low, papery vibration that raised the hairs on my arms. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out the drip, drowning out everything but the weight of the key still burning in my pocket. I fumbled for it, the metal warm again, almost twin-breathing, and when I pulled it free, the light caught the edge, revealing something I hadn't noticed before, a series of tiny, precise notches along the bow, like teeth of prime numbers, eh? The same ones etched into the bread. My stomach twisted. What is this thing? A sound cut through the hum, a dry, rasping cough, like a rusted hinge being forced open. I spun, heart-lurching, and there it was, the cat. Not just any cat, ancient. Its fur was the color of old parchment, streaked with dust. Its eyes milky and unblinking, like windows to a place that didn't exist anymore. It sat on a stack of documents, tail flicking once, slow and deliberate, as if counting the seconds of my life. The air thickened, the scent of mildew sharpening into something fuddy acidic, like the inside of a battery. My nostrils flared, and I coughed, the taste of copper flooding my mouth. The cat's lips peeled back, not a snarl, not a hiss, but something fuddy-older. A voice, if it could be called that, emerged from its throat, a wet, clicking rasp. Follow the numbers to the broken hinge. The words slithered into my skull, not heard but felt her vibrating in my bones. I staggered back, my heel catching on something, a loose floorboard. No, threads it. Fine. Silver threads, thin as spider silk, attached to my wrist, winding up my arm, disappearing into the shadows. I yanked my hand away, but they didn't break. They fishhook, like a fishhook buried deep. The lamp beside me swayed, the bulb flickering wildly. I reached out, fingers brushing the base cold twenrong, and knocked it over. Glass shattered, the bulb exploding in a shower of sparks, and the room plunged into near darkness, the only light coming from the documents themselves, their edges glowing faintly like embers in a dying fire. The mildew scent intensified, choking me, and I gagged, my vision swimming. The cat was gone, vanished. But its paw print remained, pressed into the dust on the floor, the claws leaving deep, jagged marks like the notches on the key. A drop of water hit my shoulder, then another, the fun plink, 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 plink of the drip, now a steady, relentless rhythm. I turned, squinting into the darkness, and saw it, a stack of documents trembling, the pages rustling violently, as if something beneath them was breathing. I reached out, fingers trembling, and pulled one free. The paper was brittle, the ink smeared, but the image was clear, a map, and in the center, in bold looping script, was my name. Declan Fitzwilliam. The drip turned to a foy-gush, water rushing from somewhere unseen, and the pages fluttered wildly, the map twisting, revealing something else, a door, a hinge broken. And above it, written in the same hand, the words, "You are already inside." The locusts found me before the fog did, a low, rhythmic shh. That wasn't quite buzzing, more like 1,000 tiny scissors slicing through silk, their wings beating in unison, synchronizing the air itself. I clutched the key tighter in my pocket, the prime-notched metal pressing into my palm like a brand. The streets of my own neighborhood had become something else. The sidewalks cracked open in jagged mouths, oozing a thick, amber liquid that hissed where it touched the pavement. My sneakers stuck to the mess, each step pulling free with a wet, fentwitch lick-lick. The fog rolled in like a living thing, swallowing the streetlights whole. One by one they died, not flickered out, but drowned. Their bulbs dimming into nothing as the mist coiled around them. The locusts thickened, their bodies pressing against my skin like a swarm of needles. I raised an arm to shield my face, and that's when I saw it. An umbrella propped against the skeletal remains of a mailbox. Its fabric was the color of old bruises, the canvas stretched taut over a frame of rusted metal. The handle was carved with the same prime number notches, the wood blackened as if scorched from the inside out. I didn't think, I grabbed it. The moment my fingers closed around the handle, the locusts recoiled, their collective buzz dropping to a whine, like a record skipping. The umbrella flared open with a soundless snap, and suddenly the air beneath it was clean, sterile. No mildew, no rot. Just the sharp, metallic tang of rain that hadn't fallen yet. I exhaled, and the steam from my breath coiled into the fog like a ghost. Then the ground dissolved. Not crumbled, not cracked. Have dissolved it like sugar in water. My feet sank first, the soles of my shoes melting into the pavement, the amber liquid seeping up my ankles, cold and cloying. I stumbled back, but there was no ground left. Just the umbrella above me, the locusts swarming in frantic circles around its edge, their wings a blur of black and gold. Not down through. The world inverted, the sky becoming a ceiling of swirling gray, the locust's buzz morphing into a distant footy hisser, like steam from a broken pipe. The drop was endless, or maybe it was the umbrella's shadow stretching after me, a tunnel of darkness with a single thread of light at the bottom. My stomach lurched, the key in my pocket heavy as an anchor, then impact, not on solid ground, but on something poisofty. A mattress of damp paper, the pages of old documents rustling beneath me like dry leaves. The air smelled of ink and something older, something foin buried. My lungs burned. I coughed, and the sound echoed, distorted, as if my voice was being pulled through a funnel. You were never meant to hold the key. The whisper didn't come from above. It came from the darkness below me, rising like steam from a crack in the earth. The locusts had vanished. The fog had vanished. All that remained was the sound of my own breath, ragged and wet, and the weight of the umbrella's handle still clenched in my fist. Something shifted in the blackness beneath the documents. A shape not quite human, its edges blurring like a half-erased photograph. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless expanse of skin that rippled as it moved, the folds of it glistening with the same amber liquid that had swallowed the street. The key in my pocket grew warmer, hotter. The notches along its edge pulsed, like a heartbeat. The thing below me exhaled, and the umbrella began to bybeat. The paper rustled beneath me, a dry, insistent whisper against the silence that had swallowed the locusts, the fog, everything. My lungs burned, each inhale a rasp against the dampness clinging to my throat. I pushed myself up, the mattress of documents shifting beneath my weight, releasing a cloud of dust that tasted like ash and regret. The key in my pocket radiated heat, a feverish brand against my thigh. The hisser hadn't stopped entirely. It was fainter now, a subterranean sigh that vibrated through the paper and into my bones. And there was something else. A hum. A high-pitched, almost imperceptible thrumming that resonated with the pulsing heat of the key. I looked down. The threads. They were almost invisible against the sepia-toned paper, thin filaments of something metallic and dark, anchored to my wrists and ankles. They weren't woven, but 20 attached like surgical sutures. Each strand pulsed with a faint internal light, a sickly green glow that reflected in the dampness of the paper. They stretched out, disappearing into the inky blackness that pressed against the edges of the paper. Mattress, the scissors snip sound was back, closer this time. Not the frantic, chaotic buzz of the locusts, but a precise measured twinned rush, like shears trimming a delicate fabric. It seemed to emanate from the darkness, drawing me forward. My legs moved without conscious thought. I followed the threads, each step sinking slightly into the yielding paper. The scent of mildew intensified, a cloying sweetness mixed with a sharp tang of decay. It filled my nostrils, coating my tongue with a film of something bitter and unfamiliar. I wanted to recoil, to claw my way back to the surface, but the threads held a subtle, insistent pull. A beam of weak moonlight pierced the darkness, illuminating a figure standing at the edge of the paper pit. It wasn't human, not entirely. The moonlight caught the outline of a humanoid shape, but the proportions were wrong. The limbs were too long, the torso too narrow. It stood motionless, shrouded in what looked like a patchwork of sepia-stained fabric. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the threads and into my teeth. My vision blurred at the edges, the paper pit seeming to warp and distort. I blinked, trying to focus, but the figure remained, a silent sentinel in the gloom. I could see more of it now. The fabric it wore wasn't clothing, but a collection of stitched, together scraps, worn newspaper clippings, faded photographs, fragments of what looked like old maps. Each patch seemed to shift and writhe, the images within them blurring and reforming. It had too many joints, places where elbows and knees should have been. There were instead an unsettling number of articulated segments, clicking and whirring with each subtle movement. The sound was dry and brittle, like the cracking of insect shells, and the face. There was no face, just a smooth, featureless expanse of skin, the same sickly green as the light pulsing within the threads. It rippled slightly, like a sheet of water disturbed by an unseen current. The amber liquid, the same viscous substance that had swallowed the street, glistened on its surface. The scissors snip sound intensified, almost painful now. It seemed to be coming from the figure itself, from the joints clicking and whirring beneath the fabric. The threads tightened, a subtle but undeniable pressure against my wrists and ankles. Panic clawed at my throat. I tried to pull away to sever the threads, but they were anchored deep, fused to my skin. The key in my pocket burned hotter, radiating a heat that felt like a brand. The notches along its edge pulsed, a frantic, irregular rhythm. Tudi were never meant to hold the key. The whisper echoed in my mind, not from the figure, but from somewhere deeper, from within the threads themselves. It was a cold, clinical voice, devoid of emotion, yet laced with an undercurrent of amusement. The threads tightened again, a sharp, stinging sensation. My joints locked, my limbs stiffening. I stumbled forward, drawn inexorably toward the figure, the paper pit receding behind me, the hum intensified, drowning out all other sounds. The scissors snip became a deafening chorus. I was being pulled, not violently, but with a slow, deliberate force, as if my body were being reeled in by an invisible line. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It simply waited, its featureless face reflecting the sickly green light of the threads. The paper mattress vanished behind me, replaced by a swirling vortex of darkness. The threads tightened, pulling my joints, bending my limbs, forcing me closer. I could feel the pressure building, the strain in my muscles. Then, everything went black. The door wasn't there before. One moment, the garage-best rear wall was just sheetrock and peeling paint, the kind of dull, institutional beige that made the whole place feel like a holding cell. The next, tweed. A click, like a cassette being ejected from a VCR. It was gone, replaced by a narrow slit of darkness, the kind that doesn't just swallow light but seems to fight and make. It, as if the air itself had been spliced open. The scent hit me first, mildew, but deeper, older, the way a basement smells after a flood that never quite dried. Underneath it, something metallic, like burnt wiring. My fingers twitched toward the key in my pocket, but the cat was there before I could reach it. The cat. It sat on the workbench, its ancient body a blur of motionless decay, fur the color of old parchment, clouded eyes reflecting the dim garage light like two cracked lenses. Its tail flicked once, slow and deliberate, as if measuring the weight of something unseen. The VHS static started low, a faint 20 HSSE that vibrated in my teeth, then grew louder, bleeding from the darkness where the door had been. The sound coiled around my skull, pressing behind my eyes until the garage walls seemed to warp, the edges of my vision bleeding into the same sepia distortion as the cat. Sphere. Then the tapes. They weren't arranged. They were C-stacked, leaning precariously against the wall like a child. House Tower, each labeled in black marker with prime numbers, 50P1, P7, P13 asterisk, the digits smudged as if written in haste, or by a hand that no longer remembered how to hold a pen. The static grew louder, a white noise that wasn't just in my ears but TV's in. Like a swarm of locusts, trapped beneath my skin. I reached out, my fingers brushing the spine of FP1 asterisk. The label was peeling, the numbers faded to near invisibility. When I touched it, the static freemed a sudden, jagged burst that made my bones vibrate. The cat didn't move, it just watched. I pulled FP1 asterisk free. The tape was heavy, the plastic stiff with age, the label cracked like dried mud. The VHS deck on the workbench hummed to life without a switch being flipped, the motor spinning up with a sound like a dying engine. The static turned into a roar, a distorted wall of noise that pressed against my ribs. Then the screen flickered to life. A grainy monochrome image of Trini me, standing in the same garage but younger, my face thinner, my hair darker. I was holding a knife, the blade glinting under a light that wasn't there now. The image was wrong, off-kilter, like a reflection in a funhouse mirror. My hands in the footage were moving in ways that didn't match the angle of the camera, stretching and twisting as if pulled by invisible strings. The cat's tail twitched again. Then it was gone. In its place, a single tape rested on the workbench, labeled in the same smudged handwriting, Fitzwilliam 2003 asterisk. The cat's paw extended, claws clicking against the plastic, and before I could react, it had pressed the tape into my palm. The moment my fingers closed around it, the static inside my skull became a physical force, a pressure that made my teeth ache. The garage lights flickered, the bulbs buzzing like faulty transformers. The cat's eyes locked onto mine, clouded and unblinking. And for a second, I swear I saw it and myself reflected in them. Not the man I was now, but the boy in the tape holding the knife. His face twisted in something that wasn't pain, wasn't fear, but recognition. The tape hissed as the deck ejected it, the plastic warm against my skin. The static was just in my ears anymore. It was foodie everywhere, a living thing crawling under my skin, filling my mouth with the taste of copper and burnt film. I pressed play. The screen flickered. The image of me, no, not me, not really, appeared. But this time, the distortion was worse. The colors were wrong, the sepia tones bleeding into sickly greens, the same sickly greens as the threads that had pulled me through the paper. Pitt, the boy in the footage, was kneeling, his hands pressed into the floor, and from his wrists, the same metallic filaments stretched out, disappearing into the darkness. His mouth moved, but no sound came out, just the static, a wall of noise that drowned everything else. Then the words formed, not on the screen but twin-sided. My head. The transgression was yours to carry. Asterisk. The documents were stacked in a wooden crate, their edges frayed like the petals of some long-dead flower. My fingers trembled as I pulled the first one free. A yellowed affidavit, the ink smudged as if written in a hurry or by a hand that no longer knew its own strength. The words blurred at first, then sharpened into focus, each letter cutting into my skin like the serrated edge of a blade. Unlawful excavation of site designated. Forbidden Sector 9. Asterisk. The date at the bottom made my stomach lurch. Asterisk. The 12th of June 2003. Asterisk. The same day. The same foodie hour, even 11:47 p.m. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, the air thick with the scent of mildew, and something older, something that had festered in the dark for years. The fog outside pressed against the garage walls, a wet, suffocating weight that seeped through the cracks in the sheetrock, condensing on my skin like a second layer of sweat. The cat was still there, perched on the workbench, its tail flicking in slow, deliberate strokes. It hadn't moved since it pressed the tape into my palm, but now it turned its head, those clouded eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my blood turn to ice. A low, guttural meow rumbled in its throat, not a question, not a demand, but something closer to a warning, or a reminder. The sound wrapped around my neck, tightening with each slow exhale. I flipped through the rest of the documents. Photos of the dig site, blueprints of the anomaly, medical reports with red, stained pages. My name appeared in every one of them. Declan Fitzwilliam. Asterisk. Not the man I was now, not the one who had spent years piecing together the fragments of his own past. The boy, the transgressor. Asterisk. The words on the page twisted, the ink bleeding outward in slow, uneven streaks, like tears or something worse. I pressed my palm against the paper, and the heat of my skin made the ink spread faster, the letters dissolving into a wet, shimmering mess. The artifact was never meant to be unearthed. Asterisk. The words formed in my mind. Not on the page, the letters sharp as broken glass. Fid woke something that has been sleeping for centuries. Asterisk. Outside, the fog thickened, pressing against the garage doors like a living thing, the mist curling around the edges of the tapes, the labels softening, the numbers fading into nothing. The cat, meow, sharpened into a hiss, its claws digging into the wood of the workbench. It leaned forward, its body rigid, its eyes fixed on the VCR deck. The machine hummed, the motor spinning up with a sound like a dying insect, the static inside my skull growing louder, a swarm of locusts trapped beneath my skin. I reached for the tape labeled with my name, Fitzwilliam 2003, asterisk. The ink bleeding across the plastic, the letters dissolving into the grain of the tape. The moment my fingers closed around it, the world twitch shifted. Asterisk. The VCR deck ejected the tape with a sharp vertic click, the plastic warm against my skin. The static wasn't just in my ears anymore. It was everywhere, a living thing, crawling under my skin, filling my mouth with the taste of copper and burnt film. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life, the image grainy, the colors wrong, the sepia tones bleeding into sickly greens, the same greens as the threads that had pulled me through the paper. My face appeared on the screen, but not Twimime. Asterisk. Not now. The boy, the one from the documents, the one who had dug too deep. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, just the static, a wall of noise that drowned everything else. Then he screamed, not with his voice, but with his body, his face twisting in silent agony, his hands pressing into the floor, the same metallic filaments stretching from his wrists, disappearing into the darkness. And then, I was on the screen, not the boy, not the man I was now, something else. Asterisk. My face was there, but wrong. The features stretched and warped. My eyes, black voids. My mouth, a lipless. Slash. The static turned into a roar, a distorted wall of noise that pressed against my ribs, and the words formed in my mind, not on the screen, but fuffendy and seed by my head, sharp as needles. Truth, the burden is yours. Asterisk. The tape hissed, the plastic melting in my grip. The screen flickered, the image of me, not me, not me. Screaming silently, the sound of scissors snipping fabric filling the garage, the threads of my own flesh unraveling, stretching into the darkness. The screen shattered. Not with a bang, but a spiderweb of cracks that bloomed outward from the point of impact. A silent explosion of fractured glass and distorted light. The locusts in my skull intensified, a physical pressure against my temples, blurring the edges of reality. I stumbled back, the melted plastic of the VHS tape dripping from my fingers, the scent of burnt film acrid in my nostrils. The image on the shattered screen wasn't gone. It lingered, a fractured mosaic of my past self, his terror reflected 1,000 times in the shards. He was in an office. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly pallor on the room. The walls were beige, the kind of beige that felt deliberately soul-crushing. He was younger, thinner, his face unlined, untouched by the years of whatever it was I'd been running from. He was signing a document. The pen scratched across the paper with a dry, insistent rasp. The signature. It was mine. The same looping script, the same precise slant, the same damning declaration. The locusts pulsed, a rhythmic throb that synchronized with the scratching of the pen. I felt a coldness spread through my limbs, a detachment that made the scene on the screen feel like a memory viewed through layers of gauze. Was this real? Had I somehow traveled? The air in the garage grew colder, the fog outside pressing against the windows with renewed intensity, a silent observer to my unraveling. My hands trembled, the heat of my skin radiating through the melted plastic. I wanted to scream, to deny the evidence unfolding before me, but the sound caught in my throat, a strangled gasp. The boy on the screen looked up, his eyes meeting mine, or what I thought were my eyes. They were wide, filled with a desperate plea, a silent accusation. Then the image warped. The colors bled, the office dissolving into a swirling vortex of sepia and sickly green. The metallic filaments, the ones I'd seen in the photographs, began to appear on his wrists, thin, silver threads snaking out from beneath his sleeves, disappearing into the shadows of the office. They pulsed with a faint, internal light, a sickly luminescence that mirrored the glow of the screens. The locusts intensified, a deafening roar that drowned out everything else. Then the image shifted again. It wasn't the boy anymore. It was me. Not the man I am now, not the boy from the office, but something else. My face was there, the familiar contours twisted into a grotesque parody of my own features. My eyes were black voids, reflecting nothing. My mouth was a lipless slash stretched into a silent, mocking grin. The static solidified, becoming a tangible force, pressing against my ribs, stealing my breath. The words came again, not on the screen, but transcended, my head sharp as needles, piercing my thoughts. Fear the burden is yours. From the tape hissed, a drawn-out, agonizing sigh. The plastic in my hand dissolved further, the heat searing my skin. The image on the shattered screen, me, the distorted me, screamed a silent, desperate plea that resonated deep within my bones. The sound of scissors snipping fabric filled the garage, a precise rhythmic click that echoed the frantic beat of my heart. I felt a phantom sensation, a tightening around my wrists, a stretching, a pulling. The garage lights flickered, plunging the room into near darkness. The fog outside seemed to coalesce, forming grotesque shapes against the windows, faces leering at me from the swirling mist. The cat hissed, its eyes glowing in the darkness, a silent sentinel guarding a doorway to oblivion. Then, a new tape began to roll. It ejected itself from the VCR deck with a soft fatuity, landing on the concrete floor with a dull thud. The label was blank, the plastic cool against my trembling fingers. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the play button. The locust screamed, a relentless chorus urging me forward. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't grainy this time, the colors sharp and vibrant. It showed my garage right now. I was standing there watching the first tape. The image was clear, unsettlingly so. It was me observing myself trapped in a loop of fractured reflections. And then the image zoomed in, focusing on the cat, its eyes locking onto the screen, directly into mine. The scissors clicked again, closer this time, and I felt a sharp tug on my arm. The VCR's whir was still ringing in my skull when I lurched through the garage door, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. The fog swallowed the threshold whole, coiling around my ankles in thick, wet tendrils. It smelled worse out here, mildew and rot, the kind of stink that clings to abandoned cellars after a flood. My breath fogged in front of me, each exhale a ghostly sigil, dissolving into the mist. The scissors in my pocket dug into my palm, the weight of them grounding me in something real, something twin wrong. I didn't run at first. My legs moved in jerks, like a broken marionette, each step sending a fresh jolt of pain up my arms. The threads those fucking twisted tighter around my wrists, the silver filaments biting into my skin. I could feel them, pulsing a slow, deliberate rhythm beneath my flesh, as if something was counting the seconds until it could drag me back. The cat was gone, vanished like it had never been there, leaving only the damp imprint of its paws on the concrete. Then the fog moved Tidai. Not the way mist moves, drifted, lazy. This was deliberate. It parted like a curtain, revealing them, shapes emerging from the depths, their outlines shifting like oil in water. The first one stepped forward, a hunched thing, its exoskeleton a patchwork of jagged plates, some fused together at grotesque angles, others hanging loose like the broken shell of a beetle. Its limbs were too long, joints bending in ways that made my stomach lurch. The air around it warped, the fog condensing into a shimmering halo before it exhaled, a wet clicking sound, like a swarm of insects trapped in glass. One reached for me. Its fingers, if they were fingers, were segmented, each digit tipped with a translucent membrane that pulsed faintly like a vein. The moment it touched my cheek, the world tenverted. The cold wasn't just cold. It was semi-live-a-dedoise, a dry, vibrating pressure that sank into my skin. I tasted copper, the metallic tang of blood, though there was no wound. The threads on my wrists burned, a white-hot brand searing through my nerves. I stumbled back, my heel catching on something, a crack in the pavement or maybe a bone. The fog swallowed the sound. The thing tilted its head. Its face, if it had a face, was a smooth, featureless oval save for a lipless slit that stretched into a grin. Not a smile. A split. The edges of its mouth were lined with something darker, something that looked like dried sap or... It opened its maw, and the sound that came out wasn't a voice, it was a chorus of whispers, 1,000 voices layered into one, each one hissing the same words, "The map is broken." The fog behind it rippled. More of them emerged, their exoskeletons clicking together like a swarm of locusts in a drought. The scent of decaying leaves choked me, thick and cloying, pressing against my throat. I fumbled for the scissors, my fingers slipping on the slick metal. The threads on my wrists have tightened, a sharp tug that nearly dragged me to my knees. The creature in front of me took a step forward, its limbs unfolding with a wet, sucking sound. And then, a sound, not from the fog, not from the things in the mist, from Pooty behind me. The garage door groaned on its hinges, the rusted metal shrieking like a dying animal. The fog recoiled, the creatures flinching as one. The air turned electric, charged with something worse than the cold. The thing in front of me let out a sound, half screech, half gurgle, and the mist swallowed it whole, as if it had never been there at all. The scissors were in my hand. I turned. The garage was empty. The VCR still hummed, its light blinking red. The cat sat on the workbench, its clouded eyes fixed on me, its tail flicking once, slow and deliberate. The threads on my wrists burned. The map was broken, and I was still holding the scissors. The scent hit me first. Ozone and coffee. The sharp, electric tang of a startup pitch deck being printed in the back of a crowded furphy. My hands trembled, not from cold this time, but from the sudden, jarring from remembering the garage walls shifted for the peeling floral wallpaper blooming into a sunlit office, the concrete floor transforming into polished hardwood. A projector hummed in the corner, its lens casting jagged teeth of light onto a blank whiteboard. *2000*, my mind whispered, .com. Boom. *, I was standing in front of a conference table, my pulse hammering in my throat. The suit I was wearing, cheap polyester, the kind that itched when you sweated, felt suddenly suffocating. The scissors in my pocket pressed against my thigh, a cold counterpoint to the synthetic fabric. Across from me, a man in a rumpled button. Down leaned back in his chair, his grin too wide, too knowing. You retelling me V got a business plan for... What, exactly? His voice was a greased slide, slick with skepticism. But I had the map, the feral map, the one that didn't exist. A navigation system that doesn't need satellites. I said, my voice steady, rehearsed. The words tasted like ash. The man's eyes flicked to the device on the table, a sleek black box, its screen flickering with coordinates that shouldn't have been possible. Route not found, recalculating. Then, the GPS locked onto something. A place, a feline. The cat was there before I saw it. One moment, the room was just me and the investor. The next, it was crouched on the table, its ancient eyes reflecting the projector's light like twin moons. Its fur was the color of dried parchment, its claws clicking against the wood as it turned its head toward me. The key was always a trap. Asterisk, it whispered, though its lips didn't move, the investor didn't hear it. He was staring at the GPS, his smirk fading. Asterisk, where the hell is that? Asterisk, the walls are ripped tend. Not like fabric, not like paper, like the world itself unzipping along seams that had never been meant to hold. The conference room dissolved into fog, the same thick, cloying mist that had swallowed the garage. The investor screamed, but the sound was distant, muffled, as if he were already drowning. I reached for the scissors, my fingers closing around the familiar weight, and the cat thivy-leaped, not at me, but tivy through me, its body dissolving into the fog like ink in water. The garage was back. The VCR still hummed, its red light blinking like a dying heartbeat. But the floor beneath me wasn't T-concrete anymore. It was 20 stone cold, uneven, worn smooth by centuries of something. Foreign crawling. The cat sat on the workbench, its tail flicking, its eyes fixed on the far wall, and there where the wallpaper had been was an archway. Not wood, not drywall. Stone tree too, carved with numbers, prime numbers, stacked in spirals, their edges worn but still sharp, still hungry. The air smelled of mildew and decaying leaves, but beneath that was something else. Typewriter keys die. Clicking faster now, a staccato rhythm, like a message being tapped out in Morse. The archway impulsed of, the numbers flickering as if lit from within. Asterisk, the map is broken. Asterisk, the cat said, its voice layered over the clicking, a ghost in the machine. Asterisk, the map was always broken. Asterisk, I stepped forward, the threads on my wrists, foot wide, hot. But I didn't pull away. The archway was waiting. The cat's eyes reflected something I didn't to want to see. A future where I was already on my knees, my arms stretched above my head, the thread still pulling. The scissors were still in my hand. I could cut them. I could run. But the typewriter kept clicking, and the archway was open. The stone floor beneath my bare feet wasn't cold. It was TV alive, thrumming with a vibration that traveled up my legs and into the threads already biting into my wrists. The sepia haze of the dig site swallowed the skeletal remains of the garage. The peeling floral wallpaper now etched into the ancient stone archway, like a fossilized dream. Mildew and decaying leaves clung to the air, thick as cobwebs. But beneath it all, the sharp metallic scent of ozone foof. The same as the safe FXT, the same as the GPS screen fucking cut through. The locust swarms buzz, a constant low thrumming in my skull, intensified as I turned. Not insects. The sound of the threads pulling snip, snip, snip through the fabric of my skin. My joints burned, not with heat, but with a cold, precise pressure, like copper wires being drawn taut. I looked down. Where the garage's concrete had been, now the stone floor, and the threads thin, silver, glowing with the same metallic sheen as the archway's carved numbers swing, were anchored not just to my wrists, but to my ankles, my elbows. They stretched back, vanishing into the sepia fog, each strand connected to a different point in time. I saw them, a younger me in the garage, sweating over the VCR, the scissors clenched tight, a version of me in a different, grimmer garage, staring at a bloodstain on the floor. Another me, older, hollow-eyed, standing before a different archway in a different rain-slicked city. My past selves were sweetie nectardi to me, tethered by these glowing threads. I was the cartographer, the anomaly, the transgression. The burden wasn't hidden. It was sweet-woven into my flesh. The scissors were still in my hand. I could cut them. I could run back into the garage, into the familiar broken reality. But the threads pulled harder, a counterpoint to the locust's buzz. Snip, 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 snip. Each pull sent a fresh wave of cold fire through my joints, making my knuckles whiten around the handle. I felt the strain of all those past selves, their collective weight dragging me deeper into the dig site's heart. The archway pulsed, the prime numbers flickering like dying embers. The cat sat on a nearby stone slab, its clouded eyes reflecting the sepia glow, its tail flicking with a sound like dry leaves skittering on stone. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The message was in the threads, in the pull, in the relentless sievant snip snip echoing the sound of my own unraveling. I took a step forward towards the archway's heart. The threads on my wrists burned white hot, the cold fire of the connection. My shoulder joint cracked with the strain. I saw the older me in the rain-slicked city, his hand reaching out not for help, but for the archway, his face already etched with the same terrible understanding. The map is broken. The map was always broken. The words from the cat's whisper now made sense, a chilling echo of the GPS's route, not found. The map wasn't the territory. It was the 20 lie. We walked on. The territory was the threads, the pull, the weight of the transgression. The fog thickened, swirling with the scent of mildew and the ozone tang, closing in like a suffocating blanket. The locusts buzzed louder, a frantic counterpoint to the sound of the scissors snipping fabric thushten, the fabric of my own skin, my own timeline. The threads pulled, the archway pulsed, the fog swallowed the distant forms of my past selves. The scissors in my hand felt suddenly useless, cold metal against my trembling grip. The final whisper, not from the cat but from the threads themselves. The fog, the very stone beneath my feet, seeped into my ear, a sound like dry leaves whispering against stone. The map is not the territory. The fog closed over my vision, the threads pulling with the final sharp snip.